Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-host,
Beth?
And Brian.
So we've got a lot to talk about this week. I feel like this is going to be a dated episode, hopefully quickly. But let's talk about our news first, as always. First thing we got to talk about today is that as of our time of recording, March 15th, we have lost 3 Epcot live performances. At the end of today, British Revolution, Sergio, and the Matsurizo Drummers. I don't know if I pronounced that right? Okay. They will all no longer be performing at Epcot. Thoughts? Because I don't know.
It's just like they're just ripping, like, little by little, I feel like ripping the soul out of the parks, because these types of performances are really, unless they're planning on replacing them with something else that's like culturally relevant to the, pavilions that they're in, they're just taking all the character out. Like, if they keep doing this World Showcase is literally going to be eat, drink, and ride a few rides with no Streetmosphere at all.
They've been kind of showing that they're just pulling Streetmosphere out and they're not replacing it. So I don't know. I'm trying to stay hopeful and hoping that these things will be replaced. But I mean, based on the way they've been doing things lately, I don't see that happening.
It's like, I could get some of them, I think, to an extent, because I've never watched British Revolution. Not to say that maybe there's some, population out there that's a must-do thing for them every single time, or whatever other musical acts. But, like, I don't think I've ever seen Sergio perform and not have a crowd. Like, that's one of the things I always look forward to when I go to Italy, because it's just such a fun little interaction, a little experience that you can have there. And the drummers in Japan, like, you can hear that all the way around World Showcase. Like, you can't ignore it, pretty much.
Everybody stops for them.
We had that conversation on our World Showcase episode where, like, we even said you can hear them everywhere. And it's crazy because they were like, okay, so my thoughts originally, because the first one I saw were British Revolution. My first thoughts were, okay, they're cutting it now because the post that I saw said that their contract was up sometime in April, I think. It was like a couple months from now. So what they were doing was they were cutting their contract early, which kind of made sense because, like, all right, the UK is a tiny pavilion. We know that Cherry Tree Lane's going in there somewhere. Where are they going to put it? They're kind of far out of the way. Maybe it just made sense to do that. That was my thoughts there. And then the drummers, and I was like, all right, that's weird. They're right there. Like, what is the purpose of that building now if they're not there? And then when Sergio was announced, I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely insane. Like, it feels like the loss of a lot of the studio's heart again. And that's kind of weird to me. Like, I'm finally getting to a point now where I'm okay with where things are going there. And it just feels weird that, like, Epcot is kind of pulling that Band-Aid off again, like you said before. It's very bizarre.
And I just feel like they picked literally the, like, day before to announce it. And I get that the parks are closed until April 1st. But could they not have just, like, I don't know, done something where the parks closed, and then when they reopened, they announced, like, we've decided to not have these acts return? It's just like, it seemed so sudden.
And the thing about it is, though, none of these were announced by Disney. I don't know if you guys have read any of these releases. Like, all of the things that have come out have been, like, posts from these people's social medias. Like I'm pretty sure in our Discord I sent the Sergio post.
the
Yeah.
Sergio one. Oh, that was
Let me
sad.
go see if I
yeah.
can find the one from the drummers, because that one was actually here it is. That one was actually worse. None of these came directly from Disney, and that's what I think kind of like, to your point, they're probably not planning on doing it. And I try very, very hard to not be like almost conspiracy theory-esque on this show. I say as I'm the one that did the entire C episode, and but I do try not to like point the finger and be like, it's all this person's fault or whatever. But like, I have seen a lot of speculation that I kind of agree with, that it seems like Disney was going to cut them and they're going to just use the timing of the park shutting down and coronavirus as an excuse for them to not come back. Like,
See, and I mean, honestly, I don't think you're wrong. It's a total cop-out move. But honestly, I feel like that's worse for Disney to
is.
make that call. You've got all this bad news coming out. Like, the one thing I feel like you would really want are these Streetmosphere characters and performers that you know the hardcore fans really, really love. This is, I think, the worst thing. Dude, you're going to be shut down for 2 weeks, and then you're going to tell us, or we're going to find out that these people are losing their jobs. Like,
And the other thing,
it's bad. You got bad news
the
after
other
the
thing
other.
is that I've seen Sergio perform at Boardwalk before. So because they're not closing the hotels and people are still staying, like people are that were already there, like before they announced it and had their trips planned, they could have at least had some entertainment, you know, at the hotels. Like, what else is everybody going to do? Literally, the only thing open is Disney Springs at this point.
yeah, that's a really good point. And I don't know how true this is, because obviously take it with a grain of salt. I saw it on Twitter. Apparently it's rumored that Springs is going to close on Wednesday. I mean, at the point that this episode comes out, if that's true, it will have already happened. But I think that also...
I mean, I think that makes sense because everyone on property is just going to be congested in that one area, which is basically just as bad as having a park open.
And the other thing is Wednesday is when CMs or college program kids are supposed to be out of their dorms too. So it kind of makes sense if they're staffing some of those stores with college program kids that they're not going to be open. Like it.
Yeah.
To Disney's credit, which I didn't think I could say, there's no good way that they could handle any of this. And
No, and I mean, closing the parks is the right call, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But you know that decision's going to upset a lot of people, especially people that have trips planned and everything. But just from a PR standpoint, this is a nightmare.
Also feel really bad for all the people who had Disney weddings planned this next 2 weeks.
Well, we'll talk about some of that stuff. I don't know about weddings because I'm sure that that's probably not going as well as some of these other things. But yeah, I don't think there was a good way for them to handle it.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have on here? Our next news story is that the first golden accents, some rose gold or rose pink for Cinderella Castle, has already begun. I'm
not a fan of the pink, I've decided.
Like I said before,
I like the brighter blue, but I feel like it's too rich.
There's too much
And I
contrast.
think the gold will look really good, but like, I don't know. I also think it looks really bad right now with it being piecemeal together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the gold accents will kind of bring it all together, but the colors make it look a little more cartoonish to me, which I don't like. I think, it had kind of realistic, if not like kind of grandiose architecture before. At least it was kind of like, realistic in that sense, but it just looks cartoony now.
I'm kind of hoping that, obviously I want the best for the workers and stuff at Disney World, but if they're, willing and able, that maybe they can use this 2 weeks to get a bunch of stuff done construction wise and paint wise.
Oh, I was thinking that for sure. Construction, paint,
Yeah,
and
refurbish
ride
stuff,
maintenance
yeah.
with all the issues they've been having.
Kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. They are maintenance is expected to stay in the parks, I believe, and I would imagine construction too, which under the circumstances, a lot of places that aren't closing, like because of that kind of like you're not in confined area, like I think them closing to the public is the right call. I don't know if them keeping it open to workers is entirely the right call, but I guess we'll see.
I mean, I would think that if it reaches a point where most workplaces are closing down too, then Disney's
Yeah.
going to have their employees leave as
The
well.
way that I understand it with Disney Springs employees, because my best friend works at Disney Springs, and I hope that they would also use this, I guess, strategy, is that if you come into work, like if you're scheduled like these maintenance guys or maintenance workers and construction workers or whatever, you come into work, then that's fine. But if you don't come into work, you're not penalized for it, because that's how Disney Springs is operating right now. Like, you're not going to get fired or whatever if you don't come into work.
Yeah.
So it's like at least the option is there without them making them feel like their job is at stake.
Well, let's save some of those thoughts for later, because I definitely have some of those and they tie into our main topic. But then this last one on here is that Disney College Program cast members are finally unblocked from Hollywood studios, and that feels so wrong to say.
For one day after they got basically the boot.
Yeah. This is going to be kind of a negative episode. I feel it. I definitely feel it.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because we definitely try to remain mostly positive. That's true. And I think
kinda hard
to
not to
preface
with
it,
this
a lot of
news,
our
you know?
anger doesn't stem from the fact that the parks are closed, because I know we're kind of jumping ahead with that, and we've said that a lot already. I don't want to make light of this situation at all. A lot of posts that I've seen from a lot of these Disney blogs and like Disney news outlets have kind of been clickbaity about it. And I really don't want to do that, because it feels very wrong to do.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this as a discussion, and I also want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not mad about the parks closing, because that is the right call. But let's talk about Hollywood Studios first. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I really don't. It feels like they were like, well, here's your plus. We're ending your program, and you're allowed to go to Hollywood Studios. Right,
But you
which
get
is like
one
not a
chance
one
at
chance
Rise of the
thing.
Resistance.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess let's do housekeeping first. Yeah. So we
Let's
got
add
a
some
review
positivity
from
to this episode.
Luna Lemon 23 on iTunes. I know I've said before, anytime you leave us a review, we will try to read them on the show if I catch them. I've been very bad about catching them lately. But Luna also just joined our Discord, so she's become a part of our community already. She said, "Can't stop listening. Wow, this is hands down my..." That was a very bad wow. Let me try that. She said, "Can't stop listening. Wow, this is hands down my favorite Disney podcast. 4 different personalities give a rounded perspective of the parks and company as a whole. I enjoy the fun banter and how they keep it hilariously real and aren't just pixie dusters. Plus, the variety of topics they cover in each episode is so fun and creative that I am always eager to see what the new episode is about. Thanks for making such a magical podcast." Well, thank you, Luna, for diving in and, like I said, becoming a member of our Discord and joining our little community we've got going on here. It's been awesome to meet you so far. Oh, okay. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bright spot on
We
our
decided
sad
that it would
episode.
be very topical to cover the news of the parks with the coronavirus and talk about maybe some of the past closures that they've had as well. I think we can definitely talk about the closures and do like an overview of those, and then talk about how Walt Disney World is dealing with the current issue at hand, because we have a lot of information on there too.
Okay. So, yeah, we had talked about discussing about past park closures that Disney had called a couple days ago, and I happened to look it up, and turns out Disney Food Blog actually did a pretty concise and all-encompassing list of any time that Disneyland or Disney World had an unexpected closure. So I'll give most of the credit to them, but I'll go over the times that this has happened before. The first time a Disney park has ever closed was on November 23rd, 1963. This was Disneyland, and it was closed after the JFK assassination. The next one is pretty incredible. Huge gap between that one. 63. The next one wasn't until 1994, and this was when a 6.7 magnitude earthquake hit LA, and it was funny reading this. No, I shouldn't say funny, but it was interesting that it was actually debated apparently in Disney history whether or not that the entire park was actually closed this day or not. And that seems kind of odd to me that in 1994 we wouldn't have some kind of source to actually confirm this, but apparently it's still kind of a debated topic. But some people say that the entire park was closed, or some say that only certain attractions were closed. But we do know that after the earthquake was hit, if it was open, that a lot of the attractions had to stay closed until each one could go and be individually inspected. I don't know why I wrote expected in these notes, but until they were inspected and proven that they could operate safely.
So can I interject for a second?
For sure.
There's actually a closure that you did not mention.
Uh-oh.
So
add it in there.
Oh boy. I'm going to send you this article because honestly, I think this may be a highlight for this episode too, as awful as that sounds. But can somebody read me the headline of the article that I just sent?
Okay. I did come across this one too, but it apparently wasn't officially a closure, but yes, how a group of 70s radicals tried and failed to invade Disneyland. The Yippies takeover did not quite go to plan.
So, I felt like we had to talk about this, and I'm surprised you didn't throw this in here because this is kind of funny. Did you read any of this at all, or should I go into this?
The article that I read over Disney Food Blog did kind of a smaller snippet of it, but by all means, go ahead and read this one.
So, I'm gonna probably like fail miserably at this because I only found this like a couple minutes before we started recording, and I didn't see it on here, so I kind of wanted to call it out. But apparently, on August 6th, 1970, Disneyland was abruptly shut down about 5 hours early, and around 30,000 visitors were kicked out of the park. But it wasn't due to anything like the hurricane or a national crisis. The motivating factor was a group of about 300 Yippies who entered the park with grand plans of capturing Tom Sawyer Island, liberating Minnie Mouse, and cooking Porky Pig, who's not even a Disney character.
Jeez.
So I'm not going to dive like very deep into this, but the highlights of this article are that this was apparently right after Disney lifted their ban on, or it had relaxed its policy towards long-haired guests, and they had lowered their strict dress code. Like there's a bunch of weird things about this, and it's just the fact that they tried to liberate Tom Sawyer Island.
See, that's weird because the Disney Food Blog article says that they had done it to make a statement. I'm sorry, it was the 25th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, and because Bank of America was the main sponsor of Disneyland, and they felt that Bank of America was largely responsible for the Vietnam War, that's why they did this. Did your article go into that?
I don't see that on here, but honestly, there's so many weird things about it. Like, this article has a picture of the Yippee flag that they tried to put up in Disneyland, which, as you can see, that probably didn't go well.
No.
It's also got pictures of them on the rocks at Tom Sawyer Island, which is an interesting picture. Let's see, what else does it have on here?
This was my favorite part there, that apparently this group took out ads in the paper and everything to, drum up support, and Disneyland was like working with the police in order to prepare for this. They were expecting 100,000 protesters to show up.
Oh yeah.
And then those 300 are what made it in.
And then it also has this picture of the police on Main Street, which is like so surreal. I don't know.
Wow. That's crazy. That seriously looks like some like dystopian novel or like movie that they just made up.
Yeah.
That is kind of creepy to see, almost in the black and white and everything.
It's very eerie. And I figured this was a good little laugh because like it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, so we can move on from here.
Let's see. One I'm sure probably everybody knows about was that Disney World closed after the attacks on the World Trade Center, September 11th, 2001. They evacuated because they had already been open. Disneyland didn't open this day because by the time the word had reached them, it was earlier on the West Coast, so they didn't open the parks. But I was looking into this a little bit, and it was pretty incredible to see the amount of work that the cast members went to. They said they were able to completely evacuate the entire park in less than 30 minutes. So I'm sure that took a lot of very well trained and cast members working together in order to make that happen. So good on them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. The next couple of ones are going to be pretty obvious for anybody that lives in Florida, but it's pretty crazy to see kind of the timeline of these things happening. People know that a lot of times Disney World gets closed for hurricanes, but it's also pretty interesting to see that from 71 until 2004 there were no closings because of hurricanes, and then in 2004 it was like everything came together, and another pun here, a perfect storm, because August 13th, Hurricane Charlie closed Walt Disney World. It reopened the next day, but they did have to close some of the attractions down because there was damage to them. Less than a month later, September 4th to 5th of 2004, Hurricane Francis hit Florida, and it caused another 2-day closure of the parks. And then, not even a month after that, September 26, 2004, Hurricane, is that Gene, I believe? I wasn't here during that time.
I think so.
Third hurricane in 2 months to hit Florida caused yet another closure of the parks. So from 71 till 2004, you got 33 years of Disney World operating, and then we have 3 separate hurricanes cause 3 closures in 2 months. I think that's pretty insane to see.
I wonder why that is. Is it because they projected those specific hurricanes to be on a higher scale of damage, or maybe because I mean, obviously there had to have been hurricanes in between those times. Were they just not supposed to be as bad?
It was probably the magnitude that they
assuming.
were projected for. They just assumed that it was going to be. I don't even really remember those, honestly. But I feel like they probably projected them to be worse than things that they had expected or that guests could handle being in the park for.
The next one didn't happen until 2016, and now these are ones that I am familiar with because I was in Florida during this time. October 5th, in preparing for Hurricane Matthew, Disney World closed all their parks at 5 p.m. and then the next day, October 6th, the parks remained closed. I was actually at Disney for this.
Me too.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I actually went to Epcot
So,
the day that they closed early, and it was great because it was so empty.
really?
Yeah, and
That's
then we
interesting.
locked ourselves in our hotel room for the entire next day, pretty much.
That's interesting. See, I live on the Space Coast of Florida, so I mean, we were, projected to get hit extremely hard. So we were planning on kind of just staying and riding it out, and then it ended up getting projected to be so bad that we decided that we would at least go to Orlando. And it was funny, like we looked and the Disney hotels were like the only places that weren't booked up. And we actually ended up looking on, it was one of the like hotel sites. I don't know if it was like Travelocity or one of those. I can't remember the exact one, but I didn't even know you could get Disney hotels on those websites. And they had one opening, and we snatched it up. We stayed at Pop Century and just rode it out there with the with some of our supplies and everything. But
Did you have your dog at that point?
no, we did not.
Because I know back then they were letting people bring their pets to evacuate to Disney World, if I recall
okay.
correctly.
No, we actually got her. We adopted her right after this, and we think that she had. I don't know. I think she was a stray on the street, but obviously they took in a lot of dogs during the hurricane in our local shelter. So we adopted her right after that when they had a lot of dogs to adopt. But I thought Disney did a really, really, really good job of handling this situation.
I was sad
Was
that
that-
we weren't on property. We actually were in a timeshare, so we were.
Okay.
It was right outside the gate, so it was super close, but we didn't get the full Disney like hurricane experience where they have the characters come into the lobby and playing games and stuff like that. So we just went to the store and bought a bunch of like, I don't know, ready to eat kind of meals or like stuff that we could cook pretty easily, and just hung out in the hotel room.
Just hung
the
out.
Timeshare
Yeah.
that we were at.
We
Did you have
ended up
that
taking.
experience?
Well, so I know it probably is going to go against what a lot of people were saying at this time. We packed up like all of our food and that kind of stuff and just brought it with us so that we would have it in the rooms, because we didn't know, if we assumed they were going to still have power and everything, but we didn't know how anything else was going to go down. And I don't know if you guys remember, but this was when everybody was getting so pissed off at Pop Century, and I think some of the other
Oh, was it like
resorts were
the
doing it too.
sandwiches?
Yeah,
The
I thought that was the
sandwich
last
thing.
one.
Yeah. I remember seeing pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was
And-
Irma, but maybe it was Matthew. I don't remember it. They all kind of blur together.
I remember it distinctly because I know everybody was complaining about how much they were charging it for stuff and everything too, but I swear to you, if you guys would have seen what I saw when we walked into the Pop Century lobby to check in, it was a madhouse. There were people in the little like gift shop like snatching candy off the shelves and like it was like a barren wasteland. Like every single scrap of food in that place, like snacks, chips, unhealthy stuff, no matter what, it was completely cleared out. And I know good and well if they would have just been saying like, oh yeah, everybody can come just grab food if they want it or whatever, it would have been insane. So I thought Disney actually did a pretty good job of handling all this. I remember some of the cool things they did was like there was an arcade there and they just put it on like free play for the entire day for everybody. And like me and Jordan actually went down there and played around the arcade for a good bit. And any of the restaurants that were serving food were giving like annual pass holder discounts to anybody that went and ate at them. So I think they did what they could to make the best out of a bad situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's see. So after that, the next one, September 9th through 12th of 2017, the following year, that was when Irma hit and it was closed. And pretty interesting to see those 3, or I guess technically 4 days were the longest any Disney park had been closed up until now. So starting after today, all parks closed in response to the coronavirus until at least the beginning of April will be the longest unexpected Disney park closure ever.
Which, that's a very nice segue into the next part of this, is like how Disney's handling it. And I think that obviously by the time that this episode comes out, a lot of this stuff is going to be, for the most part, like already pretty regularly out there. But if anybody really checks in with us as their source, it's a bit of information to have. But as we kind of mentioned at the time that we're recording this, all the parks are now closed. They were continuing their standard operating hours until today. And once they close for good tonight, they'll close until at least the end of this month. Which, good. We've talked about that. We said this is like the best way they could have handled anything like that. But with that also is a lot of uncertainty about cast member jobs. We've kind of had this discussion all day with a lot of people. As of right now, or I think actually technically yesterday, college program was being signed off on by Disney. So technically their program is completed. But all of the college programs and international college program kids are dismissed as of yesterday. And they're to be sent home by Wednesday. So 3/18. Which is terrifying. Like a lot of people like uproot their lives during college to come to Disney to work for like this once in a lifetime experience. And then it's like, it's taken away from them. And that's,
yeah. And I mean,
that's sad.
I wish Kirsten was on here to be able to explain kind of how it works, but I would imagine that a lot of these college program kids are kind of relying on the housing and stuff that they get from the program. And now they're kind of just put out there.
Yeah, from what I've been seeing, a lot of college program kids do rely on that, because if you follow Disney college program, basically what they do is you go down and you work for them. They do offer like classes, but it's not really like college classes per se. But
it's basically, I want to spend a semester at Disney World.
Yeah, and it technically counts as like an internship for a lot of things. But they only accept college kids that are currently enrolled. So obviously it's not like you're signing on for a full-time job type of thing. It is a technically paid internships of sorts. They give you housing that I think you pay for with your check.
So it's just taken out.
Yeah, like it's a deduction from your pay. And then you rely on that for food. But then also like the reason that a lot of these kids get by is because their entertainment is basically free. They get to go to Disney for their time. And I know we do have a couple listeners that have done DCP, so if I got that wrong, I apologize. But like I said, it stinks from the perspective of like, you know, they pull themselves out of school and this just happens. Like, it's just bad timing. There's not anything they could have done to do it differently. And I like I said, I really don't want to make it seem like we're mad at them for doing these kind of things, because this ultimately is kind of the right goal. I almost wish that they would have done something else though for them, like extended their housing or done anything to kind of make the transition easier. Because these kids come from all over. That's the thing that like kind of upsets me the most, you know? Like, for me, if I had done this in college and this was my college program and I got, you know, termed on that for this, it would stink, because like Disney doesn't pay for their transportation or anything. They're just expected to go home. So that's what's really stinks about it.
And with this sort of a time to handle all that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, there are some, I think I dropped this link in our Discord, but there are some places that are like kind of stepping up to help alleviate some of those costs, not just for college program kids, but like disaster relief in general. Like, I'll pull that Twitter thread up. Apparently, U-Haul is offering college students 30 days of free self-storage. Enterprise made it easier for college kids to rent a car by reducing the minimum age and waiving young drivers' rental fees.
That's huge. I'm 27 now, but I can tell you I got bit by that before, so that's a big deal.
Frontier's offering college students discounts on travel. And then there's a couple like Florida representatives that are like asking college program kids to reach out to them to help them like with housing and stuff like that. Like there are, of all things, like the coolest thing that I have seen come out of this, as awful as that sounds, is like a lot of people have really stepped up and shown a good side of humanity in all of this. Yeah. And that's really cool. Unfortunately, it came at a bad time, but yeah. Any other thoughts on the CP situation before I move on from there?
No.
Okay. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this thread too, but this was something I kind of wanted to mention. That's, oh, look at that related tweet, Bob Iger. Anyway, it kind of along the same lines that might be interesting to point out. I put in here, it's a link from someone that works at San Angel, and the title of the thread is How Working for Disney Went from a Dream to a Nightmare. And it explains that apparently a lot of the restaurants and places in Epcot and World Showcase are third-party vendors, which we kind of knew. And students that come in from their international college program do sometimes get placed in these third-party vendor locations to give kind of a more authentic experience. And this one specifically describes the experience that this person had working at San Angel for food and beverage. Apparently what happened was San Angel basically up and told them, like, you guys are done. Like, get out, essentially.
Man.
And they weren't paying them at all for their time. They also had issues with housing and stuff like that because it was kind of thrown off on them. And then these people reached out to Disney, and Disney also said, hey, like, just so you know, we don't handle your contract. You have to go to your leadership with that. The very end of this thread, they also updated it with this morning that some CPs went to talk to their leaders, and they agreed to absorb the housing costs for the 2 weeks that they won't be paid. So at least they won't have housing debt. But interesting kind of thing to talk about is like how you don't realize all of these hands that are in the Disney mixing pot and how they kind of jumble everything up when something like this happens. So
I didn't even realize that San Angel was a third party.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Like, I lost it here, but there's another list in here. It's right above it. Most of the restaurants, the Mitsukoshi, which we talked about, the Arribas Brothers, they're all third party. And all of them were basically, from my understanding, I only have seen that and a couple other sources say that they were all kind of left to their employer's discretion how they would handle this situation, which really kind of sucks.
Man, yeah.
We also have heard that part-time employees, we haven't heard too much about them. Some are being relocated to the resorts, which are staying open. Some people are still there. And then we've also heard that maintenance and some other like park people are asked to come to work. And apparently the same thing happened at Disneyland, which I can't find the thing that I saw about this earlier, but I saw tweets reporting that this had happened already because I think Disneyland closed earlier, right?
I'm not sure.
I want to say it closed like right before this, like they closed before the weekend maybe. But apparently cast members were still being asked to come in and they were still in uniform. However, the music was different and all the tweets that I saw described it as quote unquote alternative rock.
Weird.
Yeah, that's a lot of people were like, it's very jarring to like drive past Disney and hear like that music coming from Main Street. But also to that, like I said, Disney has added that their hotels at Disney World and Paris will also remain open until further notice, and that they are paying their cast members during the closure period. The company also said that they'll suspend new departures from the Disney Cruise Line starting Saturday through the end of the month, which should have been pretty obvious. A lot of cruises aren't taking new people at this point. So, all that said, another one. Apparently, Simple Plan has canceled their Epcot Flower and Garden plans, which should have been known. That was a news article I found that I wanted to throw in there because I thought that was pretty funny. But then everything else,
which is funny considering that's probably the only band I would have gone to see at Garden Rocks.
I just think it's funny because it's like the fact that Simple Plan had to specifically announce that they're canceling Flower and Garden, like their Flower and Garden appearance, says a lot for where Simple Plan is in life right now.
They're not where they were in 2003, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's true. But everything else that I have in here is more or less about how Disney is handling the guest experience side of things, aside from obviously keeping their hotels open. For all of the annual pass holders, Disney's extending your AP through the amount of time that the park is closed. Right now, you have that 2-week period. If they extend the time that they're going to be closed, they're going to continue to extend it. And any renewals that happen to fall within that time are also going to get the time allowed so that they can renew after the period is up, which they really didn't have to do, but it's nice that they did.
Very nice.
Yeah.
As someone directly affected by this, I am quite happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. A small silver lining, especially considering the fact that I wasn't planning on going in the next 2 weeks. So it's like an extra free 2 weeks, basically.
Yeah. But the other thing that they're doing too, I guess this would probably only directly affect Florida residents. If you're on the payment plan, your payments are still going to continue. However, you are going to get those extra days provided as well. So you will have to pay for this month if you haven't already. But your next, like the 2 weeks that everybody else is allowed on for, you won't have to pay for them in addition to the time that's on your AP. All very good things. They also, on their DVC site, announced that since Disney resorts are going to be open, reservations are still active. So if you have a DVC stay coming up, don't just assume that it's going to be canceled. If you do cancel it, your current points will be returned to your account for the use year instead of being held in a holding account like normal cancellations. So they'll be readily available for reuse and rescheduling if you do want to make that DVC stay at a different time. Which I think would be a good perk if I was a DVC person and trying to, rebook a trip.
Yeah, for sure.
So then all of the specific stuff was also addressed on that same site. Basically, if you have any date-specific theme park tickets with a use period from March 12th through the 31st, or unexpected multi-day theme park tickets with unused dates, they'll be automatically extended to be valid through any date beginning through December 15th, 2020. And if you're unable to use them through December 15th, you may apply the remaining value of your unused tickets towards a future ticket purchase. I would assume that means that you're going to have to purchase it before the 15th and not just let it expire. But I would bet that Disney is probably going to be pretty lax on that one.
Yeah, I will say that, just as a side note, when I was down there for Hurricane Matthew and the park was closed, I had already become a pass holder, but Laz wasn't, and he had a 5-day park hopper ticket or something. And it was like the day that the parks were closed was 2 days before we were supposed to leave. So we didn't have that day. Then we went to guest services and they gave us a 1-day pass that we could come back for I think they gave us 2 years expiration date. And they're like, since you couldn't use it on this day, here's a free 1-day ticket basically.
Hey, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So if all else fails, go to guest services.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is just don't be a jerk to cast members, and they'll probably help you out with it. That's the same saying we've been saying for a long time, is just be nice to the cast members and they will probably try to do their best for you. Florida resident Discover tickets can also now be used through July 31st, 2020. Talked a little bit about those. So if that doesn't affect you, it's probably not something that you really care too much about. So the other ones that I have on here are the after hours experiences. So Disney After Hours, Disney Villains After Hours, and Disney Early Morning Magic from March 16th through the 31st will be automatically refunded, as well as prepaid reservations through that time. So dining, anything like that. And it also looks like Tables in Wonderland memberships are extending through that time period as well due to the coronavirus. Ooh, lots of stuff to go through there.
Scary times we live in.
It's so weird that we even have to talk about this. Part of me didn't even want to do an episode on this, but I feel like we have to do our part in not making this a clickbaity thing and actually give some solid information on that. And I don't know. That's the biggest thing that I'm upset about right now is just how everyone's kind of using this as a let's draw clicks into our site thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Disney is always kind of the target for bad publicity if there's even, a sliver of truth to it. And, like we said, Disney's really doing what they can in this situation. They're making the right call by closing the parks. Even if it's being too precautionary to some people, that's how it should be done, If this turns out to be a huge thing, then you can't go back and change it. So if they'd left the parks open, that could have been a big deal. And, we've talked about all this stuff that they try to do to help make up for this because this is affecting a lot of people. Honestly, I think they're doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's better to err on the side of caution.
So I want to ask you guys real quick, because you guys, I know we've talked about Reddit on here a good bit. Are you guys still frequent Redditors?
Yes.
Okay. Did you guys see the relationship advice post that was going around today?
Oh boy, no.
Okay. Let's see. I think I just saved the thumbnail. It's no longer up, as most popular Reddit posts end up. But let me see if I can grab I got the first half of the screenshot, and I'll send the second one.
As an aside, that is one of my guilty pleasure subreddits.
Oh, yes. It's so bad, but
it is everything is so reactionary on there. Somebody will write one paragraph about their relationship, and everybody in the comments knows how horrible of a person your significant other is from reading that one paragraph.
Or in the case of this one, we'll know how horrible you are.
Oh boy, ooh, I'm intrigued now.
The first, it's actually in order, so I'll let you guys read this and then we can discuss. The title is My 36 female husband, 40 male, called me a psycho censor bleep for demanding the Cinderella Castle suite from a Disney customer service rep.
Oh my God.
Should I read this out loud or should we
Oh, please just read it out loud. This is too good.
It says, I am writing this in the bathroom because I just got into a huge argument with my husband and don't know what to do. We and our 3 children had an upcoming trip planned for Disney World on Tuesday, a 10-day stay at the Grand Floridian, and a wonderful itinerary that included all 4 parks and Blizzard Beach. Of course,
they're Grand Floridian people. Big shock.
Of course, the parks have now closed, and my children are beyond devastated. I called Disney's customer service line to speak with a representative about how they can make this right. He promised a refund and the ability to rebook for another time, but then that obviously isn't good enough. I told him that he needed to do better than that, and he said that he was just following the guidelines put forth by the company. I suggested as a means to rectify this that he provide us future accommodations in the secretive suite located in Cinderella's castle. Also, side note, that's very jarring to read Cinderella's castle. Disney elitist. I said the only way to make up for this hardship my children are facing is to provide us with a truly unforgettable experience.
Can we take a?
You are not special.
Can we highlight?
Do you know how many hundreds of
right
people's...
there? Mm-hmm. The hardships my children are facing. Are you kidding right now?
Oh, just wait. The hardships my children are facing with one that provides us an unforgettable experience, one that goes beyond the standard Disney trip and will completely wash away the painful memories that will undoubtedly stay with them for years. What better way to do so than to stay in the castle of Cinderella herself?
Oh my God.
He audibly scoffed at this and said that was way, way beyond his authorization. He said tens of thousands had their vacations ruined and that it wasn't his or the company's fault and that they were doing the best that they could, which, like, side note, they are.
Yeah.
This dismissal pissed me off. I told him that, yes, it wasn't his fault, but it was his responsibility to make it right. Surely, instead of closing down a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate that's what is that even word?
Hegemon, I believe.
Hegemon in the global theme park industry would have the capacity to simply screen for sick visitors at the park entrances. Instead, they ruined my children's entire year.
Oh, my God.
Oh gosh, apparently this one's super small. Let me see if I can blow it up bigger, and then I'll read the rest of that. Because it gets instantly better.
Oh boy, this
I
just
hate
keeps
that
going.
These people think I'm special. I get to stay in Cinderella Castle.
She is not worried about her kids.
So here's the rest of it. It says, and what about the fast pass reservations that we meticulously booked during our first day of eligibility? What about the dinner plans with the princesses? How do they think it feels for me as a parent to tell my children that they can't visit the happiest place on earth because they might get sick and die?
Technically, Disney World is the most magical place on earth. Disneyland is the happiest. Get your facts straight, lady.
After all this, the smug rep just repeated he could only offer refunds for the time being and an opportunity to rebook. I again stated that it was insufficient and that I at least expected to be a lifetime subscription to Disney Plus. He straight up laughed and said, "That's not my department."
Wow.
All right, here comes the bleeps because this is where it gets good. I hung up the phone and in rage, my husband immediately was like, "What the was that?" He told me I was a psycho for the way I spoke to the customer service rep, that I was extremely unreasonable and rude, and that he was genuinely disturbed by my behavior. He said he doesn't know what happened to the woman he married, and he's not sure he can ever look at me the same way again.
Wow.
I am deeply, deeply hurt that he would say such things about me when I was only trying to do what was best for our children. Our relationship has been rocky for the past couple of years, and Disney was supposed to be an opportunity to rekindle that fire. Now it feels like that might not be possible. He is usually quite soft-spoken, so I am shocked and devastated by the abusive language he directed at me, and I don't know if I can forgive him. Now my children are crying, and my husband is pissed off, and my whole world is breaking down. I don't know what to do. How can I make things right? Is this even possible?
Wow,
Run,
this
dude.
is just reeks of entitlement.
A lot of people in the comments before it got deleted were like, you should probably use that money for a divorce lawyer.
Oh,
Jeez.
snap.
That's pretty crazy right there.
So there's your fun Reddit post of the day.
That is exactly what I go on relationship advice for.
That was painful. I think that was more painful for me to hear than it was for her to experience. All right, so the moral of the story is please don't be entitled in this time of global meltdown. Or ever,
Yes.
but especially not right now. Like, everyone's struggling. Just be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Life will go on. Hopefully, this isn't the end. Fingers crossed. Stay at home. Wash your hands.
I found it. I found the removed edit.
Oh boy.
Woof.
And the comments are still mostly there. A lot of people are like, is this a joke?
It almost is like too much that I can't believe that it's not satirical, but I've also seen people at Disney World before, so I think this could be possible.
Yeah.
My favorite is the comment that says, sorry, I think you posted in the wrong place. Here, let me find some of the more appropriate subs. Our choosing beggars are entitled parents. And then it says, for your kids are raised by narcissists. For your husband, just so
Dang.
Oh, I
That's
do love
funny.
this one. Someone says, you have to be a troll because if not, do you even hear yourself? You're so entitled and delusional. And the person below him says, bruh, I work at Disney. I 100% believe this.
So here, that's your fun read for the night. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good place for us to wrap up this week.
Was
That
that
great.
fun?
This is fun.
Was that a fun
This-
read?
That is a fun read. The comments on this post are a fun read.
Yes, that I will agree with.
That's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. As usual, if you liked the show, be sure to subscribe to it on iTunes and leave us a review as well. I just want to break from our normal outro here to just say that I hope everyone out there is being safe during this time. And if you want to have something to do to distract you from all the weird things that are going on out there, we've been trying to do a lot of community type things in our Discord this last week. While we all practice our social distancing, that doesn't mean we can't be social online. So if you want to tune in and have some fun, join us at bit.ly/S71chat, and we'll be there playing some games, chatting about some stuff that we're talking about in there and all that other fun stuff. Well, thanks for joining us again. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.